Hey everybody, welcome to the show, a show we call The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. So I'm Emerson Lancia, hanging with you for the next hour. And I know you're asking yourselves, well, what is coming up in the next hour? That's a great question, and I have an answer to it. So Michael Lombardi will be joining the program to talk about the Giants' offseason ahead, who he believes that the Giants should tag, Saquon Barkley or Daniel Jones. Tucker's takes on the new coordinators around the league. XFL picks, DFS, sports betting, sweaty boot time around the EPL, and a big NBA slate as the association returns from the All-Star break. But first, we have three analysts here to help you craft the perfect money-making NHL lineup on DraftKings. NHL.com's Pete Jensen there in the middle, DK contributor Jeff Ulrich on the left, RotoWire's Paul Bruno over on the right. Nearly a dozen games to choose from, gentlemen. Pete, give me a game you are targeting for stacking purposes, or maybe that's not your jam on such a large slate.
It's not my jam on a big slate usually, but I'm taking notice of what the Detroit Red Wings have done lately and some of the value that you could sprinkle in throughout your lineup on this team. Keep an eye on Robbie Fabry. He got banged up the last game, but if he's playing, he's been dynamite lately. Tyler Bertuzzi is trending in the right direction. They got Jacob Vrana back from the player assistance program. He had 2 shots and was +1 the other day, so I expect him to take a bigger role. It's good to see him back in action. Mo Sider is bouncing back from a slow start to the season. And if you want to say spend up for Dylan Larkin at the center position, you could offset that price very easily by going with like a Vrana or, a player like Bertuzzi or someone in the depths of that roster. Even Pius Suter lately has been, I think he has 5 goals in his past 5 games. So many options to choose from for the Red Wings. And they're back in playoff contention, by the way.
Yes, they are. Jeff, what's the stacking move tonight?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple spots I really like. I mean, I think that the Devils are in a spot where they could easily bounce back. But I'm going to talk about the Vancouver St. Louis spot here. Got a 7 handle. There's 3 games on the slate tonight with a 7-goal puck total. But the Canucks, to me, much like the Red Wings, I think there's just some really good value up and down the lineup. I mean, Elias Pettersson been playing extremely well, especially just for fantasy purposes over the last 3 games. Again, you look at him, 8 points scored, but going up against St. Louis, just weak goaltending team, definitely do not mind starting with him tonight. And you can get Anthony Beauvillier on his wing for only 4,600. Beauvillier's been really good. He's been getting a lot of power play time. You look at his minutes with the Canucks. Very steady, playing more than he did against the Islanders. So he's exactly the type of player where you may not have thought of Beauvillier as like a really top-line option before or anything more than just a role player, but now he's been elevated into a top-line spot. He's a shooter. He's still only 4,600. You can go down the lineup here too, though. Like JT Miller's only 6,100. Kuzmenko at 4,900. I really don't mind the Canucks tonight. They don't have good goaltending, so you could even look to stack this game on the other side, but I think that the Canucks offense, especially their top 6, is going to score some points, and there's still a lot of players there that are undervalued.
All right, Paul, what's the best possible stack for fantasy purposes on this slate tonight?
Well, the guys have overlooked the fact that the Bruins have something to play for tonight. They're in Seattle, and they've got revenge on their minds. Seattle, one of the few teams that have come out of Boston with two points in a game this year. They shut out the Bees, so you can bet that's on their mind. And they got an affordable first-line stack that I'm looking at. Brad Marchand, $6,700. Patrice Bergeron, $6,600. And Jake DeBrusk, who's been wielding a hot stick since he rejoined the lineup at $6,500. I think those are all good guys that are in play. I also look at Minnesota at Columbus. How about their first line? Kaprizov, $7,400. Zuccarello, $6,300. Hartman, a cheap $4,200. The Wild have won their last 3, and Columbus is tied for 31st in the league, let's not forget.
All right. 10 games on the schedule. None carry the clout of Connor McDavid and your Oilers facing off against Sid the Kid and the Penguins. So your favorite center on this slate tonight is who?
And I'm going to do the sacrilegious thing here and avoid Connor McDavid and just go down to Jack Hughes at home against the LA Kings. Hughes has been extremely, extremely good over his last few games since coming back from injury, obviously. Multiple point games in 2 of his last 4, but you look back further, I mean, this is just a complete breakout season for Jack Hughes. I just like the spot for the Devils against the Kings. The Kings played a tough game in Minnesota 2 nights ago. Now they're traveling east. You look at LA, they've done well. They won 5 in a row before that loss, but it's a team that's just due for a little bit of goaltending regression, in my opinion. And again, you look at what the Devils have done this season. When they've played poorly, when they've scored 2 goals or less, they've bounced back immediately the night after. So I think Hughes in a spot here tonight where multiple points, goal. I think you could get a big night from him. So I like paying up for Jack Hughes in this spot, 8,700.
Paul, what do you think here, man? I don't know if Stamkos is going to be the guy. I don't know if I'd pay that salary. 1 score, 1 goal, and an assist in 8 February contest for that dude?
Yeah, but he and Braden Point, they've got a matchup against Buffalo, and boy, did they look bad against the Leafs the other night. They got blitzed early at home, and I think the same thing's going to happen tonight with Tampa rolling in. Actually, no, it's a Tampa home game, so it doesn't matter where they're going to play, but Tampa's going to have the edge on the Buffalo porous defense. That's the focus of my analysis here. And then Mika Zibanejad goes into Detroit, and he's been blanked in his last 2 starts, but before that, he was on one of the most wicked streaks of scoring that I've seen this year from any player. So I'm expecting him to get off the schneid against the Red Wings and their soft defensive play of late.
All right, Pete, how much money are you going to spend at center here, dude?
A lot, actually. I have a couple of high-profile options in my mock lineup. I have Braden Point, who Paul was just alluding to. Great matchup there. Only 6,700 for a guy that has 33 goals this year, tied for 10th in the entire NHL. So Point is as good as ever before playing on the line with Kucherov, of course. Then I got Dylan Larkin as part of that Red Wings stack. I think they could maybe take the Rangers by surprise. They've played the Rangers pretty well this season so far. And then Jack Hughes. So I got 3 expensive centers on my slate. And when we get to the wing position and the value picks, I got some really nice options there just to make it all work within the salary cap.
Well, Pete, we're going there right now. So give me your best wing option, please.
Well, a really good one that we profiled in our fantasy picks, which you can find on NHL.com/fantasy every day of the season. Matt Boldy has at least 3 shots on goal in 19 of his past 21 games. So pretty much close to automatic, regardless of lineup placement. The Minnesota Wild are up and down as a team this season. He plays on a line separate from Kaprizov, which I think just shows they've prioritized this player from an organizational standpoint because they're tight against the salary cap. But Matt Boldy is a major player for them every single night and on the first power play as well. So he does get some good exposure to Kaprizov.
All right, Paul, what do you want to do here at wingman? What's the move?
Well, I mentioned Brad Marchand. He's one of the guys I'm considering for sure tonight. He's part of that stack. So in addition to him, I want Kirill Kaprizov in my lineup against Columbus. Look, on the RotoWire website, we profile and anticipate the point production in terms of DK points for every player. And on the wing tonight, Kaprizov is the top gun, projecting 15.68 points in our projections. So I think I got to have him in the lineup no matter what the cost. And I have a chance because I've got cheaper options in that stack that I mentioned. Artemi Panarin against the Detroit Red Wings, only $5,800 for a guy who was on a streak of 15 points in the 7-game stretch before being blanked his last game. I think he's ready to start another scoring streak tonight.
Yeah, Kaprizov, good for 15th right now in NHL scoring. Jeff, is Ovechkin going to be playing tonight? I know he's been away from the team for a couple weeks because of the death of his father, and the Caps have lost like 4 or 5 straight. So
yeah,
I mean, this cannot be
haven't won a game with him. I haven't heard anything official. He is back, but
okay.
It's not official that he's actually going to play tonight. So it's kind of going to be one of those things you have to look up until lock. We could get news on it soon. We could get no news until the game happens. So as of now, you got to treat that one kind of as a game time decision. Look, wing is interesting tonight. I think if you're building DFS lineups, you can make a lot of contrarian lineups by paying up a wing. Obviously Pasternak at 9,300. I think most people will opt to go to center with McDavid or Jack Hughes, but also Nikita Kucherov at 8,100. I mean, look, he hasn't scored multiple points in like 7 games, but we've got another game here with a 7 total. Like Buffalo just gave up a ton of goals to the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, Kucherov at home, with the Tampa Bay Lightning having scored 6 goals their last time out, he could absolutely light up the slate. So wing to me is where, again, if you want to get a little bit contrarian, paying up a wing, I think is going to be the move. There's a lot of value, which we're going to talk about in a minute or two at the wing position as well. But if you're going to pay up, I think Kucherov is the guy I would look to kind of pivot off of the more expensive centers.
All right, Paul, back on the blue line. Who sits atop your defenseman rankings right now for tonight?
Well, because I didn't blow my brains out with a big payout to any players to date, I can go a little higher than I normally like to on defense for a quartet of options that are first stringers, power play quarterbacks for the respective clubs. So I'll cycle through them pretty quickly because I like all their matchups. Victor Hedman at versus Buffalo, $6,700, the most expensive one. Chris Letang against Edmonton. That's going to be a wild run and gun game, I think, tonight. So I expect him to be in play for $5,900. Quinn Hughes, part of Vancouver's offense most nights. One of the leading defenseman scorers against St. Louis, a team that's been stripping itself of key players before the trade deadline. $5,700 value there. And of course, go back to the Boston stack. How about taking their power play quarterback, McAvoy, versus Seattle for $6,200?
All right, Jeff, looking at Erik Karlsson right there, man, near the top of the salary board, on pace for 107 points this season, which would be the 10th best season by a blue liner in NHL history.
Yeah, I think it's actually a good spot to fade Carlson here. Juicy Saros has owned the San Jose Sharks. If he plays, it's just going to be potentially, some kind of 3-2, 2-1 game. So I think it's a good time. I really like the Hedman call. Again, just coming back to that Tampa Bay game. But let's talk about Jared Spurgeon at 5K. Minnesota's a little bit banged up on the back end. Spurgeon's playing well over 22 minutes a night. He's only 5K. You look. He's got 1 point in his last 9 games, so I don't think people are going to be too interested here. But I really like Spurgeon as a DFS play. He is the definition of spike candidate. You just look down. He's got 15 block shots over his last 3 games, but he's also hit the shots on goal bonus a couple times over his last 12 games as well. So if he's the type of player where if he gets on the board with a point, the bonuses may just flow in for Jared Spurgeon because the minutes are there. He's got a great matchup against Columbus. And like I said, he's only 5K. So we're talking about all these top end guys. Spurgeon at 5K gives you that kind of upside on the back end where you don't have to, where you can just save some money to pay up for other positions. So definitely one of the players I got on my radar at defense.
Pete, does someone really stand out to you among the rest on the blue line?
So my 2 defensemen for tonight, I got Quinn Hughes because he leads the NHL among defensemen in power play points this season and is tied for 3rd in scoring at the position. So he's a lock. And one thing right now, like so many guys are out with trade related reasons, they're calling it, but you could count on Quinn Hughes being in the lineup where pretty much anybody else on his team, not named Pettersson or Hughes, could get traded at any point. So that's something to keep in mind for DFS strategy, like just to make sure your guy doesn't get scratched. And I also like Adam Boquist. He's playing power play 1 for the Columbus Blue Jackets and has a 4-game point streak with 3 power play points in the span. Even with Johnny Gaudreau on the shelf a little bit, he's got Patrick Laine, he's got Boone Jenner, he's got Kirill Marchenko. He's got a ton of goal scorers at his disposal. So don't be surprised if he really heats up on the power play for Columbus, a non-contending team, but one with a still potent outlook on the power play.
All right, let's wrap it up with your favorite value play tonight. Pete, this is something you teased a little earlier, so have at it, brother.
Yeah, I like 2 guys. I like Jacob Vrana to pop off at some point. Detroit's playing meaningful hockey again. You love to see it. And then also Jacob Peltier. Keep an eye on him. 4 points in his past 6 games with 2 on the power play. He had 2 power play points. He's playing second line and second power play with Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri, 2 guys that have underperformed to this point, but seems like a new wrinkle for the young kid, and he's looking really good over the past couple of games for Calgary.
Jeff, how low down the board are you going to go for your value play tonight?
I mean, you can go pretty low. It's a 10-game slate. There's just a lot of value at wing. I mean, Pete just gave us a couple really nice options, but I mentioned Anthony Beauvillier off the top. He's only 4,600. You can also look to Connor Garland on Vancouver as well. He's only 3,300, still playing a meaningful role there. Dawson Mercer at 3,700 for the New Jersey Devils has just been scoring at will, and I really like the spot at home for the New Jersey Devils as well. So, I mean, pick your poison here. Like, these guys are all under 5K. Mercer and Connor Garland are under 4K, but yeah, I mean, you got to like the Devils here. I mean, if you can get a cheap Devils top liner tonight for under 4,000, they're at home. They're pretty decent favorites against the Kings team. Like I said, maybe a little tired from traveling. I think due for some regression in net as well. I think Mercer is probably the top value on the slate.
Paul, value plays galore on a 10-game slate. Which guys are at the top of your list?
Well, I love Jeff's call of Dawson Mercer. He was first on my list, but I got 4 other guys in and around that range. They're also playing first or second line minutes in good matchups. I got Perron against the Rangers for $3,800. Killorn against Buffalo for $3,800. Zacha for Boston. He's got 4 goals and 1 helper in his last 6 games, $3,700 for him. And finally, Mikael Granlund for Nashville against San Jose at $3,600, playing first line minutes as well as first line power play minutes.
All right, gentlemen, that is going to do it. Jeff Ulrich, that is a birdie on the par 5 third for Billy Horschel. So currently T3rd, just 1 shot off the lead, bud. Billy host season has arrived. Gentlemen, adios. We talked to the Gojo guys a little bit yesterday about the big decisions the Giants have coming up here in the offseason. So now on the GM Shuffle, we have Michael Lombardi, our resident general manager, sharing with you what he would do.
Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Giants, wants more money than has been offered to him by the Giants. Daniel Jones is wanting as much as $45 million per year, according to some sources. The big news with Jones, though, is that he has now changed his agency. He's gone over from CAA to now Athletes First. How do you think that factors into what Jones might get paid this offseason? Because someone's going to pay him something. We just don't know which team and how much.
Well, I think the number one rule in free agency, you can't be scared of free agency. The Giants are. They typically are scared of free agency. They never allow the value of their players to seek the level in the market. They want to sign their guys. They have this provincial mentality to bring their guys back, and that costs them to overpay. So, in the Daniel Jones situation, for me, I wouldn't franchise him. I would just say, we're your best opportunity. You go out there and go see what your level is, and we'll come back and offer you what we think is fair based on our salary structure. Now, you got to be prepared for the guy to leave you, but no quarterback ever wants to leave a good situation. Like, they're not going to leave they're not going to leave to go to another team and after he's had the best season. So you can't be scared in free agency. You almost got to play poker and say, okay, I'll call your bluff. And he went from CAA, who's probably telling him, look, you had a great year. Here's where we think your value is. Meanwhile, he went to another agent who was probably telling him, I think I can get you more. I think I can get you more. I think I can get, every agent thinks that's how they steal clients from everybody else. They say, you got a bad deal, I'll get you more. And so he's believing it. To me, this is a kid that was benefited by the offense. He was benefited by the structure and by the coaching. If you pay him $45 million, I don't know what team in the league would pay him $45 million. Do you think he's a $45 million a year player?
Not a chance.
And if you don't use this on me, well, what else are we going to do if we don't sign him? That's the Dak Prescott line that everybody said at the time, but now everybody's saying, he's not worth that number. See, that's the line that they use to get you through the rain. They want you to use that line. They want you to say, well, what am I going to do? Well, look, I won 9 games with them, okay? And nobody uses this logic. I won 9 games with them, right? We got blown out by the Eagles in 3 games, the 2 that he played in specifically, right? He really didn't make a difference. So am I going to be 7-10 without him? Maybe, but I'll have cap room. Would I be 10-7 with him? Maybe, but I won't have cap room. Does he move the needle? Do you think, as a former DJ on the 1s and 2s, do you think he moves the needle?
He does not. Daniel Jones doesn't get the party started. He's at the party, but he doesn't get the party started. That's for damn sure. He doesn't do that. And look at their season this past season. They won 1 division game. I'm not paying $45 million to a quarterback that won 1 division game this past season.
And they tied one. They could have lost that game. They tied one, right? They're not even close to Dallas or Philly. They're not there yet. And they're paying Leonard Williams. Think about this. Leonard Williams on their cap is $32 million. That's what he charges them on their cap.
Wow.
And it would cost them $20 million to get rid of him. It cost them $12 after June 1. Kenny Golladay, who's, basically, besides Jimmy Hoffa, we can't find Kenny Golladay. He's charged on their cap. He's $21 million.
It's a ski mask Hall of Famer.
What's it going to cost to get? It's going to cost 14 to get rid of him. It's going to cost 6-7 in June. So you doing that? They could have traded a 7th round pick for Adoree Jackson and kept his contract, but they went and redid the deal, and now he's on for $10 million. Like, seriously, like at some point, you can't just pay everybody. It's not I mean, we're not at Denny's. You just can't, everybody can't eat.
So the interesting thing, though, is that tonight on the East Coast, or like at least 9:00 p.m. East Coast time, or West Coast time, which will be midnight East Coast time, tomorrow, Tuesday, essentially what I'm trying to say here, will be the opening window of when teams can start to franchise tag or transition tag some of their players. Now, that deadline will go all the way till March 7th, I believe at 4:00 Eastern time. So teams will have now all the way to March 7th to kind of negotiate these deals, which the negotiations have already started kind of happening already with these players and their teams, but that's the deadline about when they can franchise tag their guys. The Giants, they have two really key free agents, Daniel Jones, the quarterback, Saquon Barkley, the running back. I would imagine that they would lean towards tagging Jones because he plays the more important position, but then Saquon Barkley now becomes an unrestricted free agent here. If they were to tag Jones, and that number, $32.4 million, that's kind of where the negotiations probably have to start because he would not take any less than that on a per year basis since he'd make that on the franchise tag.
I would franchise Saquon. It's $10 million.
Ooh.
And I would do it for 1 year. And I wouldn't really want to do a long-term deal because I don't want to pay a guy that I'm worried about getting injured. I'd do it on a 1-year deal. I would offer him a 3-year deal at $30 million for 3 at that franchise number, not with an increase. But I would franchise him with that deal. And then I would tell Daniel Jones, bring me back an offer. Now, the agent's going to lie to you and come back with some offer, but you and I both know who's paying him $45 million. Like, let's go through the teams. Are the Tennessee Titans going to pay him $45 million?
No.
I mean, no. I mean, Derek Carr, the reason Derek Carr got cut, and we can talk about this later, is because Carr at $120 million over 3 years, that deal, nobody wanted to trade for it. They wanted to restructure that deal. Who's paying Daniel Jones? Okay, the Bears have $94 million. Are they paying him? No. Are the Falcons paying him? The Falcons are going to pay. They're at $56 million. They're going to pay him all that?
No.
I mean, are the Texans? They got $37 million. Are you going to turn around and turn your? See, when you pay 45, you're not giving him 45 for one. You're saying he's the face of our franchise, and you are going to carry us to the promised land. Are you saying that with Jones?
Not a chance. He doesn't meet that threshold to be a quarterback.
So what am I scared about? Who's going to beat me on him? Who's got a better hand than I have in the poker game?
All right, everyone, check it out because Thursday Night Football is back. Both teams last week. So the two teams that are going to battle tonight. You got the Battlehawks, you got the Sea Dragons. Look at the Battlehawks, man. Coming away with a 3-point victory last week. A.J. McCarron, couple touchdowns there, dude. And then you've got, Josh Gordon? Josh Gordon and Ben DiNucci. Remember Ben DiNucci, Samir behind the camera? Used to back up, who was it at Pitt? Okay, all right. It's a trivia question. We'll answer at another time. But anywho, the Sea Dragons losing to the Defenders last week. Wow, a couple losers, but we got a couple winners here. Jeff Ulrich's back.
Thank you.
Pierce Dietrich also back. I'm very happy that he is prepared and ready to go because he didn't think this segment was for another 15 minutes. But anywho, lots of former NFL guys in this game tonight. Thank God Thursday Night Football is back. As we mentioned McCarron, mentioned Gordon, and Samir's favorite quarterback of all time, Mr. DiNucci. Who is your captain in this one tonight, Pierce?
Well, one thing, I am excited about this game, but on the other hand, let's not forget Thursday Night Football and these primetime games and having a short turnaround. It's kind of challenging for NFL teams to pull off. Now we're going to see XFL. I think one of these XFL teams played Sunday night. Now they got to turn around and play on Thursday night. So let's not get our hopes up too high, but these are big name players, and the big name players all performed well last week, so that's something to build on. That's exciting. I'm going to go with Jahkeer Pearson. I understand that most people are going to want to play the big name guys, and that's fine, but Pearson caught 12 of 14 targets, 95 yards, had 25% target share. The offense likes to pass. DiNucci looked pretty good, and that's really encouraging and reassuring. We thought DiNucci could play well in this league. He did. I imagine he's only going to get better. His receivers are only going to get better. I like what Pearson brings to the table. I know we're overreacting to a 1-week sample size, but this is a June Jones offense that, will go back to his days at Hawaii. He loved to pass the ball, and he's already showing signs of that again. So I'll take Pearson to replicate that performance, and I don't think you can go wrong taking some of the studs either.
Okay, well, yeah, some of those studs, as we've mentioned already here, Jeff. I mean, Gordon and McCarron are sure to be popular options tonight, but who else should you be targeting?
Yeah, look, I mean, Pierce is right. This could be ugly, but at the same time, both of these teams were like very pass heavy. I mean, the Battlehawks, they didn't throw that many times, but they also only had 11 designed runs. So, I think that you're going to see both of these teams pass the ball. I like going down to Austin Prohl at 7,800. Look, we got a short turnaround. What does Prohl do? He's just the slot guy. He's the reliable receiver for AJ McCarron, who's also a pocket quarterback. This is very much like potentially the Matthew Stafford Cooper Cup connection of the XFL. And I think on a short week, what you're going to see is just the Battlehawks going back to what worked. And that was, I was just about to call him Ricky Prohl, his dad, Austin Prohl over the middle. I could see his targets getting popped up here as well. He's only 7,800. You also have Akeem Butler under there at 7,200. So I think that the popular plays will be to pay up for the Seattle Battlehawks receivers, but the Seattle Sea Dragons receivers, I can't even get the teams right. The Battlehawks receivers will be the lower owned ones, especially in the captain spot. But I think Prohl's actually got a lot of upside there, so I like him for captain.
All right, Ulrich, your favorite bet tonight, Thursday Night Football, Battlehawks and Sea Dragons. Let's go.
I mean, the total here is very tempting just to take the under on. It's been bet down a little bit. I'm just going to take the plus 3.5 with the Battlehawks. I get that, like, people expect that the Sea Dragons are better and, they got Josh Gordon, so they have to be the better team. But, like, the Battlehawks were the favorite to win the XFL before. Now you're getting plus 3.5 on them against a team who lost their first game and is starting Ben DiNucci at quarterback. Like, I'm sorry, like, Ben DiNucci may be, like, okay for the XFL. He's not that good. I think the Battlehawks actually have a fairly significant advantage with AJ McCarron. So I like that. I like the way the Battlehawks battled in week one as well. I mean, coming back, obviously knowing the rules and is a big part of this as well. And then, again, you're getting 3.5 points here. It's a key number for any NFL game or any football game, I should say, with semi-regular scoring. I'll take St. Louis just to cover. Give me the key number over plus 3.5.
Remember you were saying DiNucci was like the worst quarterback, like one of the worst quarterbacks you've ever seen? Well, Samir has revealed the answer. He backed up Nathan Peterman, the dude who threw 17 interceptions in one half of football once.
Yeah, if you can't overcome Nathan Peterman in your college career, that's potentially a red flag. I'm just saying.
All right, Pierce Dietrich, what's your bet tonight for this one?
I'll take the same bet. I'll take St. Louis and the points. And speaking more on DiNucci, he's not a good quarterback. We get that. And he's not a guy that I really want to back in the gambling market. But in DFS, 54 pass attempts, regardless of whether he's good or not, the volume is there. But that tells you something about this offense. I know I mentioned June Jones, but a 54 pass attempt in week one attack from an XFL team, that's not very encouraging to me. On the other side, you look at what McCarron was able to do those last couple of drives once he got the rust knocked off, 11 for 14, led 2 scoring drives. Another thing that people probably might be overlooking in DFS is these extra points matter. We think about touchdowns and we think about yardage, but with the 2-point, 3-point conversions, that's going to be something that some people are just going to ignore, but those are added opportunities for receivers, added opportunities for quarterbacks to score. And you saw McCarron last week go from really doing nothing to the last 2 drives becoming one of the biggest quarterbacks in DFS. I like the way they closed that game out. I like the momentum they're riding on. You might even want to consider taking them with the money line.
Okay, yeah, and as we learned last week too, anything can happen in an XFL fourth quarter. So there's 3 other games this weekend. Looking at the rest of the slate here, who is your favorite DFS pick, Jeff?
I mean, you look at the rest of the slate. I mean, it's funny because, obviously you can play full game slates starting from tonight. And if you are, I kind of still like loading up on some of the players in that game. But looking at the rest of the slate, I think that Jordan Ta'amu at 9,700 is still going to be a really good quarterback to be rostering in DFS this year. Look, the defenders. I think that the defenders are going to be a team where they rely on their defense, and I also think they're going to run the ball a lot. Jordan Ta'amu, we've seen be an effective quarterback in these types of leagues. I mean, he did actually beat out Taylor Heineke for a job way back when. I think it was a couple years ago in the first season of, I don't even remember which league it was at this point, the USFL, I believe. But Ta'amu is a player who's had a lot of experience playing in these types of leagues. He can certainly use his legs, and I think you're going to see him do that more as the season progresses. So he's under 10K. Again, I really don't mind the matchup here against Vegas either. Yeah, I think Jordan Ta'amu is a player you should be targeting going forward. I think he's going to have a really nice floor because I think that eventually the touchdowns are going to be there, but also just the rush attempts should go up. So give me Jordan Ta'amu to kind of pay up there at quarterback.
Dude, he was not good in week 1, completing 8 of his 19 pass attempts for 86 yards, no passing touchdowns, 1 pick. Did score on the ground, but some analysts out there saying De'Aaron King could take over at a moment's notice. What do you think, Pierce?
Yeah, well, that's a good point with a lot of the quarterbacks. I don't think I want to go to any of these situations where you got guys that may only play half a series or half of a half, like Paxton Lynch, and he's already half of a quarterback to begin with. The guy that we know who will continue to dominate spring leagues, it's Sal Cannella season. Last year, one of the best pass catchers in the USFL. This year, he's matched up with his same quarterback, and we thought, all right, him and Kyle Sloter are coming back. Well, Sloter didn't even play. Cannella did, 7 of 8 targets for 90 yards. A lot of people don't like to play tight ends because they can just play wide receivers with the format, but you got to kind of abandon those NFL fantasy rules that you stick by. In the NFL, yeah, you play tight end because you have to, but here it's not as cut and dry, and Cannella might as well just be a receiver. He gets the volume. He's going to get red zone looks. I think he's probably the safest play. We have a pretty good sample size last year in the spring league of Cannella routinely performing. I think he's going to have another big year this season.
All right, we'll wrap up this segment here talking XFL Week 2 with your favorite bet with the remaining 3 games, not counting Thursday Night Football here. Go ahead, Dietrich.
Yeah, for some reason, San Antonio is in the game that's supposed to score the most points. San Antonio and Orlando, the 2 teams that scored the fewest points last week, are supposed to score the most. I don't buy it. Betting unders in the spring leagues is a pretty profitable endeavor, especially when you got 2 offenses that are really bad. They have really bad offensive lines, and yet they want to run a lot. And that's a bit of a problem. In spring leagues and in these small, limited, practice leagues, quarterbacks and wide receivers can get on the same page pretty quickly. But we're talking about offensive linemen that may not quite have the size, may not quite have the skill, and then they have to learn to gel real quickly. That really hurts the run games. And so then you have 2 offenses that are mainly run-oriented. Well, obviously, they're not going to score very many points. So I'll take the under. And then you look at the quarterbacks set up here. I mean, you got Paxton Lynch, who – he was Paxton Lynch needs to blame himself. He shouldn't even be a quarterback anymore. Okay. But he's on tape saying, oh, it's the line's fault. Like, what are you doing? That's already a mess. Bury these teams now. Orlando and San Antonio, they're not scoring points.
Yeah, Paxton Lynch, guy who was benched in week 1. That's right. I'm on top of it. Jeff Ulrich, what's your bet?
Yeah, you're super on top of it. I definitely had the under circled on this game as well, but I'm going to go to my other bet here. I'm just going to take the Defenders as underdogs. I think the 2 things you need to be looking for when you're betting this league is good spots to take some underdogs. We already highlighted one against the spread, and then good spots for unders. But the Defenders, I like the way they play. They've got some really experienced coordinators there as well. And again, like they're a team that seems to have a plan. So, and their plan is to, again, use the running game a little bit, have a mobile quarterback, and then rely on defense, which, again, I'd like them for a DFS play in that regard as well. Their defense, I don't think they're a terrible bet. But then you also have on the other side, I mean, with Vegas, we talk about quarterbacks and playing bad. I mean, Luis Perez absolutely imploded there in the second half for Vegas. So I like DC in this game. I think that you're getting points. I think they're very, very live to win this. They have what I think is going to be the better coached defensive unit. And I think they're going to be very conservative on offense, which I like in this league, especially when we're talking about who's going to win the game. It's going to be less turnovers and, just putting themselves in position to get a few points.
Even with the Vipers holding home field advantage, which maybe doesn't mean a whole lot, I guess, in the XFL.
I don't think it means anything in this league, to be honest.
Okay. But. All right. Well, thank you for your honesty. Thank you both of you. And by the way, producer Drew apologizes to you, Pierce. He mixed some things up in the rundown, so it was his fault that you were almost late.
Don't do that.
I mean,
producer Drew takes the high road. I said the same thing in Slack. I said, no, the guy's just got to be ready. But anywho, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Football does not stop on the sweat because coordinators are starting to find new homes all over the NFL, right? So here's Ross Tucker's takes on some of the latest coordinator moves around the NFL.
3 things jump out to me about this Eric Bieniemy move. Number 1, he clearly, obviously felt like he needed to do this to give himself a better chance to be a head coach. It's kind of a shame that that's the case, but I think he's right. I think if he goes to Washington and he's calling the plays and they have success on offense, I think he will get a lot more of the credit than he was in Kansas City. And I think he'll have a better chance to be a head coach. That's part one. Part two, I read an interesting article from Roger Sherman of The Ringer, just talking about Eric Bieniemy. I guess two things jump out to me. First of all, he's been interviewed for head coaching jobs 16 times by 15 different teams. So the team I think I would be most interested in talking to about Eric Bieniemy is the Houston Texans. I mean, because people obviously, the color of his skin, race is talked about a lot when it comes to Bieniemy. The Texans, 3 years in a row, have hired a black head coach that wasn't Eric Bieniemy. David Culley, Lovie Smith, D'Amico Ryans. So I would love for someone to be able to interview ownership or Nick Caserio for the Texans and say, okay, 3 years in a row, you went with a black head coach, but not Eric Bieniemy? Because they probably know more than anybody else. And then the other thing is he wrote in the article that reportedly Bieniemy doesn't interview well. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, if he's been interviewed 16 times and hasn't gotten one of them, that would seem to be the case, which I think is a bigger question. How important is a job interview to actually doing the job? Like on the one hand, when Nick Sirianni, his initial press conference for the Eagles was not good. Now, that's not a job interview, but that was not good. And I think Nick would even admit that to you. But he's a really good head coach. I don't know how important a job interview is as it relates to being a head coach. I know this. I have some experience with hiring people for my small businesses or interns. I'll just say it's really hard to hire someone that doesn't have a good interview. Really hard. You talk to someone on the phone or whatever, or Zoom, and you're not feeling it. Really hard to then say, I'm still going to hire that person. So I actually think that's a bigger question as it relates to hiring in general, and in particular for football coaches. How important is the actual interview part of it as opposed to what they've proven with their players and their schemes, etc.?
Ducks takes.
The Carolina Panthers hired Thomas Brown from Los Angeles Rams as their new offense coordinator.
Thomas got a bunch of interviews. So he obviously was a hot commodity because a lot of people were interviewing him, different play. I think he might have even gotten a couple of head coach interviews, but he definitely got a bunch of OC interviews, and the Panthers ended up bringing him in. And with that coaching staff they've got, that speaks very well of Thomas Brown.
Ducks takes.
The Arizona Cardinals find both their new coordinators going to the Browns for their quarterback coach Drew Petzing and the Eagles for their linebacker coach Nick Rallis.
I don't know much about Petzing. I do know Rallis is 29 years old and immediately becomes the youngest coordinator in the NFL. That's amazing. I mean, he'll be younger than a decent amount of the players out there in Arizona. He is very highly regarded. And the fact that Jonathan Gannon handpicked him as his coordinator speaks very well of Nick Rallis.
Ducks takes.
Even more coordinator news now. The Colts hiring Jim Bob Cooter as their new OC.
So he had some role like an offensive consultant with the Eagles in 2021. Then last year he went to Jacksonville, but obviously Shane Steichen, the new head coach in Indy, remembered what Jim Bob Cooter was like that 2021 year in Philadelphia and wanted to bring him along.
All right, well, perfect segue here coming out of that segment because we have breaking news. Roll the open. Former Broncos head coach Vance Joseph is actually going to return to Denver as the team's new defensive coordinator. So that's under Sean Payton. Sean Payton filling out a wonderful coaching staff there, and there is no doubt that he will have the time of his life in the Mile High City. And there is no doubt that we are about to have the time of our lives here as we discuss the NBA, because the NBA is back following a week-long hiatus surrounding the All-Star weekend and that underwhelming game itself. And there are storylines galore, and you're looking at the top 5 price dudes on tonight's slate. Let's talk about it with Gary and Thorne, DraftKings contributor, and RotoWire's Nick Whalen. 9 games, talking best DFS plays here. A guard north of $9,000, Gary Bear. Have at it.
Yeah, I'm going to go a direction I go very often, which is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is $10,500 tonight. Look, this isn't reinventing the wheel. If you just take a quick look over at the DraftKings Sportsbook and see which game has the highest total on tonight's slate, it is Thunder Jazz, which makes a lot of sense considering that in the month of February, these two teams both rank top 11 in the NBA in pace. The Thunder are sitting 5th, averaging 102.4 possessions per 48 minutes. This is going to be an up-tempo game featuring a defense on Utah's side that has been absolutely awful as of late. They are giving up over 122 opponent points per 100 possessions since February 1st. I just think SGA is in a spot where he can hit his ceiling. And as we found out this year, his ceiling is a lot higher than it used to be.
All right. Go ahead, Waylon.
You know what? I have SGA on my list as well.
Nice.
He's at 10-5. You know, like Gary said, Utah bottom 5 defense in its last 5 games before the break. This game is right up there with the highest totals of the night. SGA is up to 49.7 DraftKings points per game at this point. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous numbers. He has not slowed down at all. Even his bad games feel like elite fantasy games. Since the start of January, guys, he's averaging 31, 6, and 4 with 1.6 steals and 1.1 blocks. So the defensive stats are just absolutely crazy for a guard. That's really what helps him keep that high floor. But I mean, you have like 13 options as far as guards who are over 9K tonight. And you know, if you're pivoting away from SGA, I'd go Damian Lillard. He's at 11,400. You're going to have to pay up. But that's the other game, you know, Blazers Kings, where you're looking at a really high total, 240.5. So if I'm pivoting away from SGA, just for the sake of differentiation, give me Lillard.
Yeah, that's right. He's got a good matchup against the Kings, who's going to have to carry more of a load as well for the Trailblazers, some bigger names out as well. So let's go to forward now. Let's go to forward north of $8,000. Who do you want, Waylon?
Again, a ton of options tonight with 9 games on the slate, but I'm going to stick with that OKC Utah game and go Lauri Markkanen at 9,400. That is all-star starter Lauri Markkanen, 27 points per game over the last 3 games prior to the deadline, or prior to the all-star break, post-trade deadline. So that's really the only sample we have at kind of the new look Jazz, who sold off some pieces. And I do wonder, you know, long-term over the next 7 or 8 weeks, you know, how much do they try to pull back? But I don't think we see any of that immediately after the all-star breaks. I think Markkanen's value is going to be safe. OKC, good defense, better defense than a lot of people give them credit for, but not sure they have a great matchup for Markkanen specifically. You know, a lot of that defense kind of traces back to the backcourt and the wing. And this is the first of 3 meetings, guys, in the next 11 days between these two teams. So it'll give us kind of a good glimpse of what to expect when we start to analyze a couple more of these over that next week and a half.
Yeah, dude had 6 double-doubles in his 12 games leading into the All-Star break. Nice pick there, Gary. And who's your forward that's going to cost you some serious cash tonight?
So I would say number 1 option has to be Markkanen, but number 2 on my list is Klay Thompson at 8,800. Klay is not the most consistent fantasy asset in the world. I think when all things are operating at peak in the Golden State infrastructure, he's not someone who's big in secondary statistics. However, there's going to be no Steph Curry in this game. There's no Andrew Wiggins in this game. And we found this out before the All-Star break just by him playing both legs of a back-to-back, but encouraging that Steve Kerr came out yesterday and said he will play both legs of back-to-backs for the rest of the season. That's pretty much the most clear-cut sign we can get that Klay Thompson's health is the best it's been in the last 2.5 seasons. So he's been taking on about a 28% usage rate since the beginning of January. That number obviously goes higher when Steph Curry is not available. So again, just with the added rebounding and playmaking responsibilities he takes on with some of these Warriors guys on the bench, I think I like Klay tonight in a matchup that's probably pretty high tempo too. I mean, the Lakers are sort of surprisingly high tempo considering how old they are. They have the fastest pace in the NBA in the month of February. So this should be a game with a couple extra possessions.
All right, so as we go to the big, beefy center position here, we'll go center position north of 8K. So basically over 10K, but producer Drew says we're going to give you the option for Mobley there at $8,000. What do you want here, Gare Bear?
I appreciate the generosity. I will not be using that. I'm just going to go not straight to the top, but as close to the top as you can get without taking Nikola Jokic. I think this is Embiid night. Look, he's expensive. He's always expensive, but he's gone over 60 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. He had a game against Memphis earlier on this season where he almost put up 70 DraftKings points. And I just think without Steven Adams, I'm not quite sure how Memphis is going to combat Embiid in the paint in the month of February. So again, without Adams for a majority of that span of time, Memphis has the lowest total rebounding rate in the Western Conference. They are just relatively undersized without Steven Adams, and that is not a good formula for success if you are trying to defend Joel Embiid.
Yo, so Waylon, Embiid, over 60 DraftKings points in 3 of his final 4 games before the break. It does feel like he is a strong centerpiece here to build around.
Yeah, I love Embiid tonight. Gary said it. No Steven Adams. That's the big thing for me. And if you dive into like defensive metrics, it's not like Steven Adams is peak Hakeem Olajuwon here, but you need big bodies against Joel Embiid. And I'm interested to see how they use Jaren Jackson against him. But I mean, Embiid's got like 40 pounds on Jaren Jackson, so I think not having Steven Adams for this matchup really is problematic for the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously you have Jokic as an option tonight. He's at 11-8. Though the Cavs were the #1 defense in the league over the last 5 games coming into the All-Star break. They do have the bodies, in theory, at least, to throw at Jokic, although he did play well in their previous matchup this season. But I'm actually going Domantas Sabonis at 10,100 tonight. I think he has maybe the best pure matchup of all the elite bigs that we're talking about. Portland is terrible on defense, bottom 5 defense heading into the break. They're still banged up front. They won't have Yusuf Nurkic. Not that that matters much, but that also means we're going to see Drew Eubanks likely guarding Domantas Sabonis. I will take Sabonis in that matchup. And again, this game currently has the highest total on the board at 240.5. So I think you're getting Sabonis at a pretty fair price here, just over 10K.
Yo, Jokic hasn't been under 50 fantasy points since January 5th against the Clippers. And that was in a blowout win, for crying out loud. All right, so let's just say people are spending a lot of money in the positions we've already talked about. Let's go. Let's help them save some cash. So Wayne, give me a guard under $5,000 here.
Yeah, I'll go through 2 guys quickly. Taylor Horton-Tucker at 4,800. Should see big minutes yet again with no Colin Sexton tonight. We'll see how sustainable that is, but as long as Sexton's out, they don't really have a ton of options. I mean, it said a lot that the Jazz earlier this week brought in a pair of 10-day guys, including the long-lost Chris Dunn. So that's what we're looking at for a point guard depth chart. THT played 32 minutes in the Jazz final game before the break, had 15, 7, and 7 with 2 blocks. So you're dealing with some variance, but at 4,800, it is what it is. And then Malachi Branham, rookie out of Ohio State for the Spurs. He's at 4,500. Spurs are still down a bunch of their regulars: Devin Vassell, Romeo Langford, Trey Jones, unlikely to play tonight. That was the case before the break. So we got this 8-game sample of Malachi Branham where he started almost all those games, averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in 33 minutes. So again, assuming Trey Jones doesn't play tonight, should be a good spot for Branham.
All right, Gary, and save us some cash at guard, please. Let's go under 5K.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, but it's indicative of this slate. I have the exact 2 names written down that Nick just talked about. And
interesting.
I think maybe we're just really smart, but it's worth pointing out that on a slate like this, coming out of the All-Star break, the NBA right now is almost eerily healthy. Considering the injury turmoil we've gone through the past 3.5 months, this is kind of like a rebirth period. And this is a very odd 9-game slate where you've got more guys who are coming back from injury than you have guys already ruled out for this slate. So I think there are going to be places where people tend to really cluster and try to find value. And it's going to be a lot of these West Coast games with the higher totals. That said, I don't think you can ignore Branham. I just think he's in too advantageous a spot if Trey Jones is unavailable tonight, and he's doubtful. So he's probably not going to play. Obviously, if Jeremy Sochan comes back, he can take on a little of the playmaking responsibilities. So I think his questionable tag, it means something. But Branham, so far in the 5 games this season, he's played at least 30 minutes. He's averaging over 35 DraftKings points per game. So until his salary is up in the 5s, you can just keep putting this guy into a lineup every single night he starts.
All right, we're going to give you guys an extra $500 here and go forward under $5,500. What do you think, Waylon?
Kelly Olynyk at 5,300. We're skirting up against that price ceiling, but he's been thriving as part of this kind of big starting five that the Jazz are rolling out. Kessler, Olynyk, and Lauri Markkanen all starting together. Last 4 games before the break, 18 points, 8.5 rebounds, 4.3 assists for Kelly Olynyk. So still getting it done, despite some concerns about that role. And then if you're really going cheap, maybe look into Cam Reddish at 3,600, Matisse Thybulle 3,500. With Thybulle, obviously, you're just hoping that he goes off on defense. Reddish played 33 minutes in the final game before the break, so it's kind of points or bust with Cam Reddish, but no Anthony Simons for Portland, so I think the minutes will be there.
Gary and Thorne, bring us home.
Yeah, I think, again, if I had to give a number one option, we've already talked about him, but it would be Taylor Horton-Tucker. Just considering there's no Colin Sexton tonight, he's going to play probably 28 to 34 minutes in this game at a relatively high usage rate. But again, maybe you try someone like Lou Dort, who's in the exact same advantageous matchup that we've been talking about over and over again, but, fresh back from injury, wasn't playing his full allotment of minutes before the All-Star break. Maybe he's up to like 28 minutes tonight and at $4,400 at lower ownership because people kind of forgot Lou Dort exists. He's someone who can kind of go under the radar.
You didn't because he's Canadian. You got to love that.
True. It is.
Dude, you got a Dort in your neck. All right, we got to go. We have EPL Best Bets for match week 25 coming up. Chin May rolling solo, no AJ, so he's going to try to make up some ground in the sweaty boot race. All right, Chin May Vania. Let's go, baby. EPL match week 25. Need some best bets here. Hey, no AJ, bro. No AJ. This is all you, all right? We're riding with you. We ride or die with you, just like you ride or die with Arsenal. Still atop the table, right? All right, despite a couple losses. Wow, last 4 games. Take it on Leicester. What's a bet in this game, homie?
Arsenal have been quietly building in this 2023 portion of the EPL season. I really like them to get a lot of goals here against Leicester. Leicester gave up 3 goals against Man United last week. So Arsenal over 2.5 goals plus 215 is looking really solid. Arsenal minus 1.5 on the goal line at plus 180 is another strong bet. But I think the Gunners getting a lot of goals here is a strong option. Leicester have cooled off after 2 great matches. They laid a goose egg against United, and I think Arsenal will slow them down significantly offensively as well. Give me the Gunners to score a lot of goals and potentially cover that goal line as well.
All right, couple points back, though. Man City, big faves over Bournemouth. What's the bet? What's the move on the DK Sportsbook?
Man City have struggled across all competitions recently. They gave up a late goal against Nottingham Forest to lose points there. They had a win, but lost 2 points on the draw. And then even in the Champions League this week, lost a late goal against RB Leipzig and now are 1-1 on aggregate. So I like actually Bournemouth plus 1.5 goals comes in at plus 100. I think that's tremendous value given Man City's current form. Now, Bournemouth haven't exactly played that well in the Premier League, but Man City are struggling right now. Kevin De Bruyne might not play again in this match, and that could be huge for City in terms of getting forward and scoring goals. Give me Bournemouth plus 1.5 goals at plus 100.
Match of the week, Chin May Vadia, Chelsea and Tottenham. Who has the edge here? And after you answer that question, take us to the bet you like.
Well, you know me, I tend to stay away from anything pro Tottenham, but Chelsea have just been so bad in 2023. I actually saw a stat this morning. Real Madrid have scored more goals in England in 2023 than Chelsea have. So I'll take Spurs on the money line at plus 150. I think this is tremendous value for Spurs. I actually think they should be slightly more favored than this. Spurs minus 1.5 goals is plus 400 if you're really getting ambitious. Over 2.5 total goals in this game comes in at plus 100 as well. But I think Tottenham on the money line is really the play here. Give me Spurs to keep it rolling against a bad Chelsea team right now.
All right, give us a goal scorer you like this week.
Harry Kane at plus 115 against Chelsea is probably a strong bet. He's probably going to get in on the goals. And Aston Villa, Ollie Watkins has quietly scored a goal in each of his last 4 matches. He comes in at plus 200 against Everton. And Everton have shored up a little bit on the back line over these last 3 or 4 matches. But I think, there's always a propensity for them to give up goals. And I think Watkins is really coming into his own now, at least of late. So give me Watkins at plus 200. And then Kane is sort of that solid option at plus 115 against Chelsea.
All right, finally, you know the drill. Best bet of the week. Follow me, Samir. Sweaty boot time. No AJ. You and AJ coming off wins last week, though, so congratulations there. That doesn't happen a lot. So make it 2 in a row. Come on.
I'll take a North London moneyline parlay. Give me Arsenal and Tottenham as the moneyline parlay. It's coming in at a big number here, plus 328. But I think both these sides get the job done here on match week 25. So give me Arsenal and Tottenham moneyline parlay.
Hell yeah, brother. That's how you do what you just did. Thanks, Chime. We're back here in studio tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, a Friday edition of The Sweat, produced by Samir. Big pick guy. Okay. Toodaloo, everybody.